Hello everyone, this is WarriorDan, and welcome to a different kind of video than I usually do. A little while back, I did a collaboration video with RandomEd. I know Ed, he's a good guy, and we had a lot of fun doing a couple podcasts a couple months ago, and this is the audio of one of our more recent podcasts when we were talking about microtransactions and their effect on the current state of the gaming industry. Now, I wanted to clarify a couple of things real quick before I share this video. First and foremost, I decided to take not an entirely antagonistic approach to microtransactions, not because I don't believe a lot of the more antagonistic things that Ed says, and by the way, I agree with you like 99%, microtransactions are bad, X, Y, and Z. I think all of that is pretty common knowledge. But the reason I decided to take a more middle-of-the-ground approach is because, well, first and foremost, I wanted to make sure an alternate voice was heard. So I just want to clear that up. Yes, I think microtransactions are usually bad, but I don't think it's an absolute. So if it sounds like I'm sucking up to major corporations, I'm not. In most cases, I don't like loot boxes, I don't like a lot of that, but I wanted to offer a different kind of opinion. So that said, all I'm gonna say is, sorry to Ed for not having this video up sooner. I've just been getting slammed with work, and I know that's not an excuse, but hey, you know, life gets in the way, life throws stuff at you, and I've got a lot of videos that I've really wanted to put out for a while now, and this is just one of several big videos that I have planned for the next couple weeks at least. So anyway, that said, this has been WarriorDan. Hope you enjoy the following video, and I will see you all very soon. Stay awesome, everybody, and peace out.
What's going on there, fellow gamers? RandomEd787 here. Welcome back to another random podcast. That's what I'm going to try to call them. Hopefully the name sticks. But anyway, I'm here with WarriorDan again. We're just going to be talking about usually the topic that I always talk about on my channel, microtransactions, everything. He's going to give his takes on it and everything. So we're just going to have a very casual conversation. So, WarriorDan, you're up.
Sounds like a plan to me. This is WarriorDan signing in. Pleasure to be with you, and I'm looking forward to getting into this topic because we dedicated like half a video to it last time when we weren't supposed to, so now we have the time and let's get into it. I do have a list of topics that I do want us to get into because I feel like these are common ground that we've, touched on in past videos, but now we have the chance to, actually get into it in full. The two games that often come to mind when it comes to loot boxes are one, the game that kind of kicked it off, and the game that is now most known for it. But we have Team Fortress 2, TF2, abbreviated, and then we have Overwatch, the game that has made billions of dollars in the last 2 years, just making loot boxes a commonplace thing. So I kind of just wanted to get into this with you and kind of get your take on how loot boxes kind of went from being cosmetic only kind of opt-in features now becoming more of a mainstream experience, and basically where do you think the line was drawn between it being acceptable and it not being acceptable and it being intrusive on players?
Well, I definitely always considered it intrusive. Well, I mean, the thing was, like, for example, back when, say, Halo 5 came out, I remember when I saw the Rex, when I heard the word microtransactions, I was mad and everything, but I still bought the game. But when I saw the Rex system, at first I was like, oh, I like these random chances and everything like that. It's kind of cool, because we all like that game of chance. Everybody's addicted to it. It's called dopamine, and stuff like that. It's a very psychological thing. And then I realized as time went on, I'm like thinking, I'm really not getting what I would like. I don't like some of the stuff I'm getting sometimes. It's not why I quit the game. I just kind of lost interest in it over time. But this is how I look at the whole micro-scam action thing going on. I look at this as a progressive movement. And the way these developers and publishers are doing this, the stuff they're doing is stupid, but how they're doing is actually very smart. When you look at how they're doing it, first it starts off, very, very small. You just get a few cosmetics here and there. They don't make it too grindy, but a little bit longer than it should. Like I remember Battlefield 3 felt a little grindy. Battlefield 4 was even more grindy. And I'm like, okay, why is this? Like, why am I only getting stuff in these battle packs? Because I don't.
It's like they're laying the groundwork for future advancements in loot boxes.
Yeah, what they're really doing is testing the waters to see what players are willing to pay for. And the only reason why I believe Battlefront 2 got the flack it did was because, this is an expression I use on my channel all the time, EA went full Marty McFly on the dial, and then blasted the guitar and see if it was going to go over well. Newsflash, it didn't go very well, and the game received massive boycotts. So, if EA, say, did pay to win, but they did it in a very more subtle way. I don't think people would have really cared as much. But I'm actually, I know me and you agree on this, that we're actually kind of glad EA kind of blew their load so quickly, because now people are so aware of loot boxes, and loot boxes are just continually getting more and more hate. And
well, I think it's not entirely due, if you don't mind me saying so, I don't think it's entirely, what was the game you mentioned again? I just kind of spaced out on the name. Battlefront. I don't think, I just, like, I don't know why I forgot the name of, like, the #1 most infamous game of 2017, but, you know, I've had a lot in my mind lately. But I don't think it was strictly because I don't think Battlefront was, like, the only key trigger to this discussion becoming mainstream. I think what really kicked it off was how soon it came off the heels of Shadow of War, which basically really brought microtransactions into the mainstream eye. Like, you started seeing politicians talking about it, you started seeing, you know, Fox News talking about it, and you know sure as fuck that when Fox News starts talking about video game microtransactions, that you've really attracted the eye of even, like, the 70-year-olds in the room.
Yeah, or just getting any mainstream attention is
well, I like
really
picking on
bad.
Fox News because I don't like them in general, but I just find it funny because whenever they talk about video games, it's usually because GTA you can get, like, a blowjob or something.
Oh
It's
my
usually
God,
pretty
I
minor.
can't- Oh, I can't fucking do that crap. Oh my
It's
God.
like, oh dear, what? Think of the children playing an M-rated game where they can get a blowjob from a gay prostitute in an LGBT bar.
Well, hey, they gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the
I'm
dangers
totally
of
kidding.
progressive. This is the dangers of progressive democracy.
Yeah.
Anyway, just getting back to Shadow of War, I think it's really what kicked off this whole discussion, because while it got a lot of flack at the time, it laid the groundwork for EA. It laid the groundwork for EA to say, look, you know, you think that's bad? See what we can do.
Yeah.
And I think EA saw that, you know, they did get a lot of flack, but EA simply was too invested in Battlefront 2 at that point to care. I think they figured that, you know, it might get some heat initially on, but, you know, we could weather the storm, and after like a month or two, people would just get used to it. And especially after Shadow of War, you know, it's not like they're the first ones to try something. Like, they're coming off of the heels of Shadow of War, and since Shadow of War was like the precursor to all this, you know, EA doesn't get at I'm sorry, not EA. I just lost my train of thought. But, you know, yeah, Shadow of War and sorry, I'm just having
the WB games.
Oh yeah, but basically the idea that let WB go first and let them be the ones to get hit first, and then, you know, Battlefront 2 comes out, you're not likely going to make yourself as big of a target by quickly following the person who did it first. You know what I'm saying? That makes any sense?
No, I totally see where you're coming from. I actually remember, I don't even know if this is even true, but this is all the way back in 2013. Apparently, there's some people who bring up that, you know, since Microsoft was doing the whole DRM thing, that Sony was doing it too, but they were going to see how it went with Microsoft first. But the thing is, if you look at the reveal events, the tone of it is completely different. You know, Microsoft was all about TV, sports, and TV. And when you look at Sony, it was all about games. They were focusing completely on the gamers. But could that have happened? It could have. But there's really no definitive proof of that. Maybe someone might have some sources about that, but I didn't.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I do remember that point in time when Microsoft was really trying to sell the whole all-in-one family entertainment console. And honestly, when you're going to gaming convention and saying, look, this is not a gaming console, but an entertainment platform, you're not going to win any support there.
Yeah, maybe if you go to like a CNET or something like that, you will.
Yeah. If I wanted a entertainment thing that offered me a little bit of everything, I'd buy myself a Sony Blu-ray. That, you know, I don't buy a Microsoft console because I want, you know, Windows 10 features on it, or it's not because I want Cortana, it's because I want to fucking play Xbox games.
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong. I don't mind hearing Cortana's voice.
No, I'm not strictly attacking Cortana, but more the idea of focusing on Microsoft over Xbox. Microsoft kind of elevating their own platform over that of, you know, the dedicated console.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to be pervy with Cortana's voice and everything. All I'm waiting for Microsoft is
we've seen a lot of Cortana hentai. Believe me, there's no lack of love there. It's like Shrek, you know, there's always going to be a level of love for that character.
Yeah, Shrek is love, Shrek is life.
Always. But moving on to the next one, just the next topic point, because I think that we've kind of deviated away once we started talking about hentai, and that was mostly my fault.
That's
but
okay.
I kind of wanted to, this was something I was thinking about when I was playing Overwatch last night, because I do like playing the competitive scene. I'm not very good. I've been stuck in gold for the last 10 seasons. I'm not the best player in the room, but I do enjoy playing it. And what do you... the best way to say this, I guess, is in Overwatch, you do get loot boxes both for free, and you can pay for them medicinally. When I bought Overwatch, I bought it day one, back when it came out like a year and a half ago. And I've not spent a single dollar in loot boxes. I simply haven't. I know friends that have, but for me, I feel like I got my value spending the $60 I spent buying it at launch. If they came out with like DLC, you know, I might be more willing to spend money on that, but I'm not one for supporting, you know, continuous microtransactions.
Yeah.
But here's where I kind of find this interesting. Over the course of a year and a half, over my likely thousands of hours playing this game since it came out, I've gotten almost all the cosmetics in the whole game without spending a single dime. So my argument to you is it morally okay to offer players paid loot boxes when you have the constant option of fairly and rapidly building up a collection of, you know, free items? Like, is it okay to introduce a paid alternative when there's a clear method for unlocking all of the cosmetics for free for players who do not want to spend that money and get stuff faster?
I'll try to process that as much as I can. So,
how about I break it down like a little bit more?
It was a little, I kind of see what you're talking about. I just didn't need a little.
Is it okay? Like, let's say player A doesn't have the money to spend on microtransactions all the time, college student, whatever, doesn't have a lot of income, but over the course of a year, they unlock, I don't know, 450 out of the 500 cosmetics. They have a good amount of value right there, but their friend, meanwhile, is able to get all those cosmetics within like half the time because they spent, you know, $5 a month or whatever on you know, the DLC. Is it okay for both people to have the same amount of cosmetics when one person paid for it and one person didn't?
I mean,
because basically you're trading time versus money. Is it okay to have a cheat system that gets you that stuff when you pay for it, or is grinding the only way?
Now, grinding should be the thing, because here's the thing that I think microtransactions and loot boxes do. I think they can inherently, I'm not saying it can happen, but I feel like it could make gamers a lot lazier, because when I was, when you and me were obviously growing up, you know, if you want to get an award, you had to earn it. Now you can just, or, you know, you put in cheat codes, but today I don't even, the only cheat codes I would like to put in today is just to alter the gameplay and just do stupid shit to unlock stuff. I do miss
GoldenEye and like all the cheat codes you could get away with it and all games like it. So yeah, I do remember those days.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I don't like the idea of just having stuff that you can pay to speed it up, because I think it can make gamers very, very lazy, and then you get the addicted tendencies to do that, because all that grind is completely intentional, because they're very careful. Like, you know, they'll say they try to balance it out. I don't believe that, because the thing is, they can always change the grind. You look at some of GTA Online, and at first it was like, okay, it takes a little longer to earn stuff, but it's not too bad. But as time went on, they kept slowly.
And now it's the epitome of microtransaction abuse. I know I was playing GTA Online with a friend of mine recently, and the one thing that annoyed us was, you know, we constantly have players in fighter jets just gunning down other players. It made the game almost not fun anymore.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about it, but I know a channel I like, Worth a Buy, he pretty much completely outright accused of being pay to win, and I'm like, you know what? I totally agree. GTA Online is full-blown pay to win.
Now let's twist the argument a little bit. Let's put a little bit of a spin on it just for the fun. And I'm playing devil's advocate here, so forgive me if I'm not like openly agreeing with you, but I feel like there's, people that would agree and disagree. So my personal thought is I don't have an issue in theory with loot boxes in the sense of like of how Overwatch implements it, where there is player choice and there's not too much of a grind. Like I can log in and get a loot box just for logging in. It's not like overly abusive in my opinion, but I'm very hesitant to approve it in like most instances. I'm just trying to get my stance here, just so you know I'm not like entirely in favor or opposed here. Right. But just to kind of put a little twist on the argument, what if, let's use Overwatch as an example, simply because it's like the most well-known game right now for having loot boxes. Let's say you could log in and when you get to like the hero selection menu where you can view all the unlockable stuff, let's say that there is an option to, like usual, you can pay with in-game money or you can get loot boxes. But let's say there's an option where for 99 cents you can unlock like all the individual stuff. Do you think it would be more okay to just allow players to openly buy what they want and not have to gamble for what they don't want?
I still don't like the idea. I mean, is it less scummy? Yes, but it's the way I look at greed is greed no matter how big or small. That's just the way I look at it, because I don't want to see other dollar signs when I'm buying a game. Now, if the game's free to download, I don't have an issue with that because you got to make money back somehow. But
what if and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Let's say that in the U.S., all the ESRB and the EU equivalent, I forget, is it PEGA, something
Peggy.
like that? Yeah, Peggy. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Let's say that in the U.S. and in the UK, they made it illegal for games to have microtransactions in there without disclaiming it, like on the front and back of the cover. Do you think that it would be okay to sell games if they were clearly marked as, including microtransactions, or what restrictions would you put on games that had microtransactions in them?
I personally wouldn't, because when it comes to the government, I like them to stay away as far as possible from nearly anything, and I don't want them getting involved with. I understand where some people are coming from about regulating loot boxes, but I don't look at them. I know it might sound a little surprising coming from me. I don't consider loot boxes full-on gambling. I would say more like pseudo-gambling or glorified gambling, as Jim Sterling calls it, because to me, gambling is you pay for something, but there's the risk that what you paid, you may not get anything in return. At least with loot boxes, you do get something in return, but it's still got that addictive, roll the dice kind of mindset.
Just to clarify, the ESRB is not beholden to the U.S. government. It's a separate board altogether.
I know that, yeah. They basically came as a result because the ESA got threatened by the government saying, either you do something or we will. And they're like, okay, fine. Well, we can't.
Also, keep in mind, the one time that the government tried to go after video games, they failed in the Supreme Court. They tried to go after video games for being violent. I remember there was a case with Mortal Kombat, I believe, way back in, I want to say the 80s or 90s. And it took Anton Scalia, I believe, the Supreme Court justice at the time. He has now passed away. But he basically said, look, it's not the government's place to be deciding what is and isn't free speech. So I'm not advocating for open government legislation, but I'm more so in favor of, the ESRB and other voluntary institutions that are, basically representatives of the AAA gaming industry. I would be interested to see them put forward rules saying that across the country, games need to be marked as including microtransactions.
Yeah, they should.
Especially if they were marketed to underage kids. Like that's where I draw the line. If you're a legal adult, this is what I say about gambling, whether it's in-game or outside of games. And you and I disagree on this because I do think that microtransactions are close enough to gambling in nature where the two are indistinguishable from one another.
They do get very close. They're
the behaviors are so similar that the only difference is, the total loss of money versus a partial waste of money. It seems too fine a line to me to, be worth considering them as separate entities.
Yeah.
But like, let's say that I'm just going to throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say that any game that isn't M-rated, like any game that is allowed to be sold to people below the age of 17 in the U.S., let's say that any game below that rating needs to be marked as, containing possible gambling, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase, possible microtransaction activity. And that any game that is not marked would be taken off store shelves until such a time as they're marked. That's kind of more of the approach I'd be willing to see, because that would allow parents and even adults buying games on their own to clearly see what they're getting into before they buy. Because in many instances, not many players are informed enough when they make a buying decision. The casual audience doesn't know that Mafia 4 whatever, or GTA 6, whatever the game is at the time, and I'm just picking on 2K here because it's funny, but any AAA game isn't really upfront about whether or not they include post-launch DLC or microtransactions or any kind of in-game purchases. And I think that does need to be marked. That way parents and normal adults can make their own decisions accordingly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't really believe there's not going to really be a revolution with the game industry until the casual audience starts rising. The hardcore audience is just become more and more aware of this stuff and is going against it more and more. But when it comes to the casual audience, that's where most of the money comes in. And once developers and publishers start losing the money from the casual audience, that's when things start going downhill. They're going to need to change course. So the more we can inform the casual audience, the better, whether it be just us on the internet or having them informed in the stores, the more closer we could probably get to some sort of revolution and just completely change the game industry because my dream is to have microtransactions out of every single paid game completely. I know that's kind of impossible, but at least in the AAA front, I just don't want to see it exist.
Well, the first step to seeing that happen is making more people aware of the problem. It's like what they say in, when you're reforming from drug use. It's like the first step to, fixing a problem is identifying that there is a problem.
Yep, and then you go into detail of why it's a problem. Because usually, I'll tell people about microtransactions and stuff like that. Because they'll probably look at it and be like, oh, okay, this doesn't seem so bad, just a few bucks. But the thing is, they're going to keep tempting you over time. And the more you support it, the more developers will just keep turning up the dial and continually make it worse over time. They just keep testing the waters, see what players are willing to pay for. Now you got a new generation of gamers coming in where they're born into this stuff, so it's even more dangerous. And what I like to tell them is that I grew up in a time where we had games just as good, if not, I would actually argue better than we have right now. And they didn't have any of this bullshit at all attached to it. And if they could do it back then, they could do it today. I don't believe in that crap that, video games are too expensive to make. Well, yeah, guess what? There's that's easily balanced by the amount of gamers there are today. There's more gamers today than there have ever been in history.
Well, also, if you look at the sales numbers, it's strictly not true to say that game developers and publishers rely per se on microtransactions to break the bank, or it doesn't make sense. It's like if you look at GTA alone, the number of sales from that game alone could pay for the next 10 sequels.
Oh my god! The game made $1 billion in 3 days of its release. That is unheard of. Yeah.
It's now one of the top-selling games on Steam of all time. There's no way that they could not afford to make a sequel without SAR cards.
Yeah, it's all great. They don't want just some of the money. They want all the money they can get. And
also, here's where I draw the line. If you remember with I'm going to blank on the name of the game. I think it was the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic online game. Was it the Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic? You know what I'm talking about, that game.
It was the Old Republic or something like that.
You know what I'm talking about, though. That RPG online game that followed the Star Wars online game that came before it. With that game, the budget was set at $500 million. There's no way that you need to make a Star Wars game that is that massively large that you need $500 million to make it happen. That's simply, it's outrageous. You don't really need that much money to make a game. If necessary, just cut the damn game down a little bit and keep your budget in line. There's no one telling you that Destiny 2 needs $500 million to make it happen.
Yeah, and
Some of the best games. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was actually just going to segue right into that. That's another thing these publishers and developers have to do. Control your goddamn budgets.
Yeah.
I think the main problem with why their budgets just skyrocket to death, I think a lot of it has to do with marketing, which is not even necessary today. You get the
Agreed.
internet. It's free advertising. Back then when we were growing up, TV was the only way. It was either TV or magazines that you had to go and find out about the newest games. But today, you just go on the internet to find out about the game. It could be practically free for these publishers. So if you cut back on that, you dramatically cut the game cost.
Well, here's the thing. The one good thing to come out of this whole industry, all of these massive over-budget AAA games, is that we're seeing a resurgence of what I like to call the AA game industry. The games that are not necessarily indie games, but they're produced by studios or by small teams, and they do have a moderate sized budget, like say in the $5 million to 50 million range. Medium sized games. Like the one game I'm thinking of is that Hellblade game from this past year. Another game that would come to mind is Little Nightmares. Another great game. We have there's a Left 4 Dead competitor out right now, Earthfall. Another good solid co-op game. All of these are AA kind of small sized indie games or small produced games. Life is Strange, another great game from Square Enix that was really aware of what its budget was. I don't think its budget was much higher than Hellblade, and yet it delivered one of the most well received stories in gaming in years. It far exceeded what Telltale has been doing in recent years. You don't need a high budget of $200 million or $150 million to make a good quality game that people will love.
Yep.
That's why I've been turning to all these smaller games, because they're able to tell the kind of stories and have the kind of gameplay, have those kinds of experience, those kinds of moments I want to fill my gaming life with. I don't want to fill what limited time here I have on Earth with, dealing with this absurd, Ubisoft and 2K crap where I have to pay, $200 to enjoy the full game.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, add on to that, well, maybe not add onto it, but give like a little thing here. That money does not create a good game. It's good gameplay that creates a good game. A team of talented and passionate developers. I mean, you look at Cuphead. That game sold like 1 million copies in like a week or something like that. It went platinum like almost instantaneously.
Or Bendy and the Ink Machine, another game that has been incredibly well received and had a ridiculously small budget. I got to meet the guy that actually made that game, and he made that game for almost no money, and instead, got a lot of money in return from people who were just, really supportive of his game, which had no microtransactions. It was very, self-aware. It didn't try to take advantage of the audience, and in return, the audience rewarded him with success.
Yep, I remember. I know you're not the biggest fan of this guy for certain reasons, but Jan kind of said stuff similar. You give people a good product, they will buy. I mean, there's a little more to it than that. You still got to get your name out there a little bit, but on the internet, it's easier than it's ever been. Back then, if indie developers started rising up, like say in the early 2000s, they would have no shot. You had to it was either your AAA or you go home. Today, you can make a video game. I can make one right here from the comfort of my own chair right here, and it could be a top seller on Steam if I pushed hard enough. So,
well, look at one of the most, infamous or famous games of all time right now. It's a game, I'm not going to list it by a name. I'm going to let you kind of figure this out as I describe it. It's a low-budget horror game that was using a outdated 2D engine from like a decade before that relied on, turning just the simplest stuff into really engaging gameplay. We had, Scott Cawthon come out with FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's, a game that had, an engine that hadn't, that was basically outdated by a decade. He used very simple animations, very simple gameplay, and very simple story, and just focused on perfecting those simple elements. And what happened is it launched one of the biggest indie franchises of all time.
Yeah, to the point where they're going to make a movie about it.
They're making a trilogy of movies, if I remember correctly, and they're hiring the guy who did Harry Potter to make it happen.
Yeah, it's just these huge miracle success stories, you know, and these are people who come from such humble beginnings and they don't need a big budget or anything like that. So that's another thing, you know, and I don't know if that's why. I mean, no, it's really agreed why they do it, but at the same time, you know, you could probably look at some of these games, like for example, I got a feeling Anthem, unfortunately, is going to be a flop because I guarantee you this game's got a massive budget. It's releasing the same day as Crackdown 3, which I still don't think is going to sell well.
No, me neither.
I can't remember the other game, but there's 3 games launching on the same day, and those include Anthem and Crackdown, and there's another one that's coming out that same day. So it's going to be very, very crowded, and if Anthem sells poorly and it has a high budget, they're gonna have almost no way to recoup that money.
Here's what I think is going to happen with Anthem, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I think what's going to happen with Anthem is you're going to get a Alien Isolation in the sense of the game will be well received for, you know, being, you know, a good quality game. I'm not saying great quality, but like good quality game, and it's going to sell decently well among the core audience, but it's not going to, you know, really resonate with the casual audience that, you know, just wants to play Halo or whatever. And it's going to kind of be viewed as like a clone of like Halo and, you know, other better games. I think it's going to reach too far with microtransactions, and I think, you know, it's good when the publisher looks at the quarter 1 reports of the game, they're going to declare it to be a failure because it only met its budget. It didn't, like, you know, do 10 times its budget. They're looking at this to become the next GTA, the next Destiny. And I think that's simply not a possibility.
Yeah,
it may make like 500 million, it might make $1 billion, but it's not going to make $2, $3, $4 billion.
Yeah, I just think this is the part that's ridiculous with these publishers. If you're just even like just a tiny bit off from your goals, they're gonna be like, abandon ship. We gotta shut down the studio. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Look, you're a company, and you're not gonna always have successes. You're gonna have ups and downs, and you just gotta accept that. But at the same time, if you want this kind of these earnings to not hurt you, then you need to, just like what we said earlier, you need to control your budgets. Like some of the
also, you have to listen to fans. You have to listen to what fans want. Look at what happened with Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, a game that bombed horribly at launch and then turned into a pretty decent game and really, you know, doubled down on what it was good at. The difference between it and other games is Ubisoft saw what was going on and said, look, you know, we realize that there are problems. Let's fix them. Let's make the game, you know, reach up to its full potential. Let's give it time. And sadly, not a lot of publishers really give their games time. Either you hit it off or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to be canceled faster than season 2 of Firefly. You know, it's going to happen. I'm sorry, I have to throw Fox under the bus here, both That's for okay. Alien Isolation and for Firefly, because fuck them.
Yeah. Yeah,
but it reminds me, and this is kind of reaching across medium, but I'm sure you're aware of the recent total disaster of a collapse that happened with Lucasfilm following Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Yep.
No, I didn't hate the film. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. I felt like it was a solid, like an Iron Man 2. Like it did its purpose, but it wasn't like the next big thing.
No.
It certainly wasn't the launching point of a trilogy. And Disney's reaction after seeing fans refused to see the film after, you know, the debacle that was Disney's reaction was, instead of listening to fans who were like, look, we don't need a Han Solo movie, we want like Obi-Wan, we want Boba Fett, Disney's reaction was, okay, let's completely solve everything about that. We'll not only cancel Solo, but we'll cancel all the films you want, and instead we're going to double down on more, you know, episodic films like 9, 10, 11, 12, featuring characters that you don't want. It's like you're not really, the company reacted by panicking and not really focusing on listening to what the consumers wanted, and instead, you know, focused on what their shareholders wanted. Their shareholders wanted them to clean house and really start over. The fans wanted them to get rid of, you know, very specific elements, and I think publishers are much the same. Instead of identifying a core problem within a game, they simply just nuke the game and start over with a new game.
Yeah, I was saying something very similar about investors and shareholders in a recent video. The real investors of a company are the people, are the consumer. They're the real investor, and if you lose those, you lose your company. That you got to remember why you're a business to begin with, and that's because you have customers. It's literally just common sense, and a lot of these publishers just can't seem to get that in their skulls.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a strange phenomenon where, you know, most businesses really just depend on the consumer, but here in the gaming industry, it's like this weird holy trinity between investors, the publisher, and the consumer. That's why I mostly ignore that whole conundrum and focus on indie gaming. If, I'm not saying you have to, but if you've seen my channel, you'll notice that I've really put a strong emphasis on the indie games, whether they're good or bad. I kind of lean my focus more in that direction because I'd rather slam a game for, being lackluster in story than I would, spend half an hour focusing on why this game has, hundreds of dollars in microtransactions. There are some games I just don't waste my time with.
No, yeah, totally. I'm trying to figure out what else I could possibly add. Anything else?
No, I think we kind of nailed that point to the ground. So let's. I think we do have No, I think we basically covered a lot of this. So from here, we're kind of just like free ranging right now. So we kind of jumped around and kind of dealt with all the topics I had in mind here in these notes.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll hold on. Let me check my timestamp. Okay, so I guess we'll kind of wrap this up to like a final conclusion because I think we kind of said what we needed to be said.
Yeah.
I think we said what needed to be said. That's what I meant.
Yeah, basically, fuck microtransactions, fuck the shareholders and stuff like that. And look, just like I just want to one thing to clarify: I'm not anti-investor shareholder because they are necessary and I don't mind them. But once they start becoming too big of an influence on a company to the point where they're like starting to have control over the actual stuff that's happening to the product, that's when they need to fuck off and just try to trust us as much as you can, but you cannot tell us what to do.
Here's one closing little mini game I kind of want to close on.
Sure.
Off the top of your head, I would like you to think of one. This is a two-part question. Name one publisher or developer that you feel does really well with microtransactions above the rest, kind of like a best of the worst. And who do you think is the absolute worst?
Well, right now I have to give. Well, I mean, I can't say for sure because I haven't played the game, but from what I hear and what I see a little bit, Epic Games with Fortnite right now seems to be doing it the way I would approve in a free-to-download game.
Mm-hmm.
No loot boxes, which I really appreciate. It's just a straight-up purchase. You know what you're getting. I have seen some of the prices here and there, and they do look a little bit steep. I kind of wish they would probably pull it back a little bit, but at the same time, I'm not going to bash them too much because it is free to download, but it wouldn't hurt for them to bring the prices down a little bit and some of the cosmetics. But I would say when it comes to the worst, for me, it's always between EA and Activision. I feel like those guys are always playing limbo with each other to see how low they can go.
I do agree with you on that one. I think for me, the best and worst, I mean, for the best, I'd say in terms of games that really, not necessarily are the best games ever, but really openly communicate with the community, don't obsess over microtransactions. I'm going to lean more in the direction of Square Enix because I think that Square Enix lately, not traditionally, but lately has kind of been knocking out of the park in terms of really focusing on producing high-quality games and not infusing them with a crapload of DLC and stuff. Not that there's no DLC, but they seem to be fair about it.
Yeah, I the only beef I have with them is Final Fantasy 15 with the season pass. I just wish I do not like the season passes because it just kind of to me it's a bit of a gamble because you don't know what you're getting. They're very vague about it mostly all the time, and they're doing that for a reason. They're expecting you, hey, you trust us, don't you? I'm like, well, yeah, to produce a good game, but what are you going to be posting, giving us before launch, like after launch? Oh, we can't tell you that. I'm like, yeah, of course you can't because you want me to pay you $50. So I don't like that, and I didn't like what they did with Deus Ex. The second Deus Ex game that came out, they just shoved microtransactions in there in the last second, but I feel like Square Enix does a good job staying out of the controversy, and has been really focusing on making good games. You know, with Nier Automata, I heard that was fantastic. I believe Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be a really clean release as far as business practices go. The only thing they did that slight irritant, but it's really not even enough for me to even be slightly pissed off about, is that you get some Keyblade skins if you depending on which console you pre-ordered on for digitally. If you get on a PS4, you get a blue skin Keyblade. Xbox Green, and Japan's got their own exclusive
Yeah, I'm not a big
skin.
fan of the whole console exclusive skins. It's like when Twitch does it. If you're a Twitch Prime member, it's like for certain games you get like these weird Twitch skins, you know, for being a Twitch member. And I get it, like it's not the worst offending thing out there, but it does feel kind of like a fuck you if you're not a Twitch Prime member.
Yeah, it's annoying, but to cause a fuss over about it and say I'm not buying the game anymore, like come on, no.
It's not a dividing line with me either, but it's kind of an irritant, kind of like a mosquito I have to slap away.
I actually kind of like that analogy as a mosquito. I like that. That's really good. Yeah, versus like with Microtransactions are like a horsefly or a hornet. Like you got to kill those things.
For me, when it comes to 2K games and, you know, shark cards and like all the things that they do, it feels like it's a tick I have to like scrape off, where it just kind of sticks to me and just kind of stays with me no matter where I go. That's kind of how I feel about 2K. But as for the worst company on the list, as far as recently, I'm going to go with I just actually forgot to. I'm going to go with Warner Brothers actually as my top pick.
That's a good one.
Between the whole Shadow of War debacle and basically any other game they released in 2017, they've looked at every single way that EA has screwed over the industry and said, you know what, we can do better.
Yeah.
We
can play some Limbo.
It feels like the gaming industry right now is in a constant game of high-stakes poker, where Warner Brothers and Activision are playing strip poker with EA.
Yeah, it's like I keep saying, the game industry plays Limbo with each other.
But here's the thing, you know, as they continue playing strip poker with the industry, we just start seeing it becomes more and more transparent. I'm kind of using the whole naked metaphor to infer that, you know, we're really seeing what these companies are capable of. And I think that, you know, the one good thing to come out of all of this is, you know, more and more voices are starting to speak up and say, look, this is not what we want. This is not what we want in our games, and we're going to say something about it. Yeah. We're going to complain to our politicians. We're going to complain to the industry. We're going to make our voices heard. And whether or not, you know, they choose the right avenues to make themselves heard, you know, progress is happening. That's why we're seeing now a resurgence of, you know, AA gaming. It's because people don't want to only support the big companies. We're now seeing more support via Kickstarter and other sites for the kinds of games that we want to see happen. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I said like a while ago that I believe a small resistance is definitely on the rise in the hardcore audience. Casual, not even close, but the hardcore resistance is slowly rising more and more as time goes on, and I believe it's just gonna keep getting bigger. I was trying to think. Oh yeah, one thing I was gonna mention with Warner Brothers, you know, they've been doing this kind of bullshit for a long time. They had the whole Batman Arkham Knight controversy on PC. I remember that shitstorm. Then they did the season pass for that game. Then of course you got the most recent Shadow of War with the microtransactions and loot boxes. Now they're removing them and everything like that. But I don't think they're doing that from the kindness of their heart and everything. They would have done that at the launch if they really felt that way. But
well, that's why it's important for PC gamers, and not just PC gamers, but I mean this does happen a lot on PC, but console gamers too, all gamers, to kind of unite and say, look, we're not standing for this anymore. It's kind of like, to quote one movie that I know you absolutely love, you know, in order to defeat the thing we hate, we have to stand up for what we love.
I mean, I don't hate The Last Jedi, but yeah.
I'm not saying that quote made any sense in the movie, but I had to play with it here because I knew you'd get it.
Oh yeah, except if it involves you know, the First Order being able to, you know, completely breach a base. You know, I'm fighting for what I love, while at the same time.
So let's allow a terrorist attack to happen because I want to save you.
Yeah, but that's not what we're doing. For us as gamers, yeah, it makes total sense because we're fighting for what we love. We're fighting for the art form. We want games to be the way they used to be. Mainly for me, it was the PS2 for me was like the pinnacle. Well, the golden age of video games was really during the SNES and Sega Genesis. Then you had the N64 coming out, and then you had the PS2 generation coming out, where I think video games started really evolving into an art form.
Agreed.
So,
Well, I think that's a good place to end it, though, because I think we've kind of come full circle with this, with all this. So is there any, closing thoughts you want to go with?
Basically, just to tell gamers to always keep up the fight, never give up under any circumstances, because at the end of the day, these companies and publishers work for us, not the other way around. And the only way they're going to stay in business is if they have us buying the products. And the best way to speak to them, you can complain all you want on the internet and everything, but they only speak in one language, English, and you gotta, as tough it is, you gotta boycott a lot of these games. It took me a while to get to that point, but it gets easier as time goes on. So, your remarks?
I think you covered it well. My position on DLC, I think we kind of differ a little bit on certain key points, but I think overall we do agree on many things. So I'm just going to end it with no one would complain if overnight, loot boxes stop being a thing. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So the best we can hope for is people continue to become more aware of the problems and the abuse that can happen, and we call out the people, who do this whenever it happens. Whether it's calling out EA, calling out Warner Brothers, we have to continue to get our voices heard and make sure that change happens. So I think that's where I'm going to end it. I guess I'll do my outro if you want to do yours.
Yeah, you
this has been This has been WarriorDan signing out.
Right.
I'm sorry, I kind of fucked up my outro. I'll let you go first while I think of something clever to say.
Okay, all right. That's podcast where you can't script it or anything. So
yeah, no.
For those that watch the podcast, I hope you enjoyed it. There's definitely gonna be more to come, but I'm gonna blast doing these. It's just something that's very good to do something new for my channel. Just kind of want to expand more. So that's it for this video. Hit the like button like you absolutely mean, subscribe button as well. It's totally free. I'm RandomEd787, and as always, game on my fellow gamers, and WarriorDan, your cue.
This is WarriorDan signing out, grabbing my pogo stick to sub it up EA's ass. So have a good day, and fuck you, EA.
Hey man, fuck you, EA. Hashtag.